لا فتى إلا علي لا سيف إلا ذو الفقار لا فتى إلا علي لا سيف إلا ذو الفقار
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today is our fourth discussion on the 110 lessons of life from Imam Ali. May God's peace and blessings be upon him. And today's topic is about the act of buying and selling within Islam, what we refer to as trade and commerce. Now this is something which each of us engage in probably on a day-to-day basis, whether we go to the shopping centers, the malls, the markets, whatever the case may be, we're always engaged in some form of business transactions, whatever we're buying. Many people obviously appreciate that the fact of Islam is a global phenomenon and that it talks about every aspect of the life of a human being. Not only the human being, but rather it tries to regulate and put into a sort of balance the life of everything on earth. So how we deal with the animals, how we deal with the plant kingdom, how we deal with really everything that exists around us. And one of the things which Islam has laid a great emphasis upon is on commerce, on business, on dealings, transactions. And in fact, when you look in the books of jurisprudence, you'll see that a large segment of the book of jurisprudence after the acts of worship, after ibadat, is about mu'amalat or business practices. In the short tradition that we want to look at today, which comes to us from the Commander of the Faithful, this is actually a portion of a letter which he wrote to his governor, Malik al-Ashtar, when he deputed him and sent him to present-day Egypt to be the governor and the chief of Egypt. He sent him with a very large document on how to rule over the masses, on how to govern, how to collect taxes, and how to run a state, basically. And in the one portion of the letter which he wrote, we want to look at the following topic about, again, the issue of buying and selling. And Imam Ali states the following: the sale should be smooth, with correct weights and prices, not harmful to either party, the seller or the buyer. Whoever commits hoarding after you have already prohibited it, give him exemplary but not excessive punishment. So we see in this very brief portion of the letter, again, it is a very long letter, it spans multiple pages, but here the Commander of the Faithful is giving Malik al-Ashtar a guidance, a commandment for him to implement, and also for his governors and his the people who be under his control within the different cities and provinces of Egypt, that they need to implement within the system of governance of that particular time. And again, not only that particular time rather, but even we can look at it even in our contemporary era. So the first thing that the Commander of the Faithful mentions is that when it comes to transactions, buying and selling, this should be something smooth, easy to do, not put through difficulties or hurdles or challenges. And correct weights and measures and prices need to be fixed. Now, we living in modern 21st century societies, we appreciate the fact that when we go to a store, whether we're going to buy groceries or we're going to buy some electronic goods or we're buying a car or something, whatever we want to buy, we want that transaction to be very seamless, easy to carry out. We don't want to go through hurdles and challenges to buy what we need within our day-to-day life. He also mentions that the correct weights and prices should be set out. And again, this is something which we tend to take for granted. We go to the supermarket, for example, and we see a label with the price of the fruit or the vegetable or the meat that we want to buy. There's no need to ask and to bargain and to argue back and forth. The price is set and that is what you have to pay. And the measure is also there because the scales are digital. You know that you have put in a pound or a kilogram of whatever you want to buy, and you know that the price is set and that what you are buying would be the weight of what is within that particular bag that you purchased. So generally speaking, we are common and we are understanding this because this is something that which we go through on a day-to-day basis. Many of us do, at least. But Imam Ali alayhi salam, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, then goes on to talk about another area about business and commerce. And he says that we have to ensure that the transaction is neither harmful to the buyer or the seller. So the buyer should not go into a loss, nor should the seller go into a loss that he buys something for a certain price and he is now forced to sell it at a lower price, and so he takes a loss in that particular transaction. Also, the buyer, when the person wants to go and buy a particular commodity, they should not also be suffering any loss. They should be able to get what they have paid for, and if it is defective or there's some problem, they should be able to recuperate and get their money back for that particular purchase. The Imam then talks about another issue. He says about hoarding, about people who try to take things and hoard them, and then because of that the price may increase within the market. He says that whoever commits hoarding after you have already prohibited it, give him an exemplary but not an excessive punishment. So this is actually something which Islam has laid down, that these issues of hoarding, so that the commodity will go up in price because of the issue of supply and demand. The Imam says that this is not something which is allowed within an Islamic economic system. Let me now look at this hadith in a few other understandings that have been given to us by our scholars. The first part is about the initial portion of the hadith, about correct weights and measures and prices. Now, Muslims don't believe that we should live in a communist system, or that that there should be no incentive to make a profit. No, profits and the profit motive is very well there within the Islamic teachings, and Islam has allowed and it is permitted a person who is engaged in commerce and trade to be able to purchase a commodity for a certain price and sell it for an increased price to make a profit, because obviously this is how that individual can grow their business. They can provide more and more to their consumers that are looking for whatever it is that they are selling. So first of all, we should appreciate the fact that Islam is not against free market and enterprise and commerce and business, and that we are allowed to engage in these actions and we are allowed to make a profit, and that there is nothing stopping a believer from doing so. The second point which we mentioned based upon the understanding from our scholars is that they state that this hadith and the general Islamic guidelines in terms of business economics that we are understanding from such traditions is that the religious and Islamic government here, so to speak, not a general government that we live in which is not ruled according to Islamic tradition, but an Islamic government would have the right and maybe even an obligation that if they see that things such as people are trying to make an excessive profit on a certain commodity within society, that an Islamic government would have the right to step in and intervene and ensure that the prices are moderated and kept at a bay. And I think even in our Western societies, we see the same thing, that governments will sometimes step in when they see that there is some sort of price fixing happening. We've seen this in the market many times with many different commodities, whether they be physical, tangible, or digital goods, that governments will come in and they will investigate firms who are price fixing certain commodities. So even within an Islamic teachings, we see that this is also a viable option, that the government has the right to come in and investigate and stop the issue of, for example, hoarding or price fixing, where people are making excessive profits on the backs of other individuals who may need that particular thing but are not able to afford it because of the economic climate that they are being imposed and pushed into. The third point is that we see that when people are living in such times where there are economic challenges, there are economic disparities, where maybe some people have excess and other people don't have enough, that it is really a human trait that we should work together with one another to try to alleviate the challenges that our brothers and sisters in humanity are facing. So if I'm able to have 3 square meals a day, but I know there are people within my society who are not able to, they don't have the luxuries of life that maybe I am enjoying, that Islam steps forth and tells the believer that one of your requirements as a Muslim, as one who has submitted to Allah, is to ensure that if not at an equal level, at least those who are lower than you economically on the financial scale, they are given some level of support that they can lift themselves up. They are working hard, but they're still not able to make ends meet, and that is where the Islamic government can step in, and the Muslim community in general can step in and help those in the society who are less fortunate. And again, this is something we see within our non-Muslim societies, where they offer different forms of support, different forms of income supplementing, whether it be from a government or a non-governmental organization. But at an individual level, as believers, this is something also that we need to reflect upon and see how we can implement it within our traditional societies that we live in the Western world. The fourth and final point, which is more so in relation to people who live within an Islamic country, and unfortunately, as we know, there are very few of these in existence today. There are many countries that have Muslims as majorities, but very few that are ruled by Islamic dictates and rules according to the Quran and the tradition of the Prophet and his infallible successors. But when those societies and governments emerge and they are on the scene, then they have a direct role to play in the economic future and destiny of their society. The government cannot sit idly by and see things, for example, as hoarding take place, of inflation take place at an uncontrollable limit, at having a huge disparity between the rich and the poor. And the government needs to step in and to actually put a control and curtail such activities. And even in our societies that we live in, which are not ruled by Islam or by any religion, which are secular in their basis, in their nature, even there we see that they need to take a stand on such activities, such illegal activities, to ensure that there is a balance within society. Not like we see today, where we are told this 1% movement, or the 1% who control so much of the wealth, and the 99% are basically at the working at the lower end of the economic spectrum. But no, there needs to be some balance and some equilibrium between these two groups. And as long as that is not there, people will continue to fight and to stand up against what they see as injustice and imbalance, many times on behalf, or many times that this imbalance is happening because of governments who are turning a blind eye to many of these organizations, individuals and corporations that are not paying their fair share of taxes and are not doing what they should be doing to support the rest of the society. We ask Allah, we ask the Almighty God to bring about justice and freedom and equality amongst the societies around the world, so that all can enjoy the blessings that God has placed upon this earth for you and I. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.